vengeance!
Hit the pace car! What for? Because you hit every other damn thing out there, I want you to be perfect!
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. It's him. He talks to me.
Well, I wanna be a race car driver. Pretty girls eating from my hand, yeah. Wanna live a life of fun and danger. No sweater working for the man, alright. Well, hey. Well, I wanna be a firefighter. Cool-headed when the heat is on, yeah. Save my baby from the burning building. Take all the way to sleepless on, alright. Well,
No, he didn't slam you, he didn't bump you, he didn't nudge you, he rubbed you. And rubbing, son, is racing.
Hey race fans, welcome to the Hoobazoo Radio Network and welcome to Drafting the Circuits. My name is Frank Santoroski. I'll be your host for the next hour as we go over everything racing as we head into Memorial Day weekend. Before we get into dissecting all the news of the week, let me introduce you to the panel that I've assembled tonight. With me as always is my friend Gray Warren from Richard Childress Racing, IndyCar.com writer Joey Barnes. I have Richard Youden, race engineer, and last but certainly not least, Seth Eggert, the NASCAR correspondent at Motorsports Tribune. Gentlemen, how is everybody tonight?
Doing good.
Very good, thank you.
Doing terrific.
All right, well, it's great to have you all on. So, we wanted a bump at Indy. We had two cars bumped out of the field. And just to kind of set this up, everybody was, there was some speculation, maybe they'd go ahead and let all 35 cars in the field. There were a couple articles that came out, most notably in the Indy Star, Jim Aiello says a bump could be disastrous for the 500. Overwhelmingly, the fans said, oh, no, we want a bump. We want bump day back. The Speedway says 33 cars will start. We're not going to add to it. They stuck to it, and what happened was one of the most popular and arguably the most visible drivers in the series, James Hinchcliffe, is bumped out of the field. Now, Hinchcliffe has been on reality television. He's the spokesman for Honda. We've seen him in the Honda commercials. He just didn't have the speed. There were some questionable calls by the team, leaving him in the slow lane until he got bumped rather than trying to get out there. When he did get back out there, the car had a vibration, and then time ran out on him. And then there's another backlash, this what's up with the gun at 5:50 instead of 6 p.m. But when they started doing that 2-3 years ago, when they started the Fast 9, so the TV would have time to interview. So, everybody knew the gun was going at 5:50 and not 6. And Hinch is on the outside looking in, along with Pippa Man. And then we've got, on the other side of the coin, Ed Carpenter coming out and making a stunning qualifying run, topping 2:30 on his first lap to take the pole. Where Elio Castroneves was fastest in the Fast 9. Castroneves, last out on the day, dropped to 8th. So we have, in the Fast 9, we've got all 4 Penske cars, all 3 Ed Carpenter cars, and then the lone Honda cars in there belong to Scott Dixon and Sebastian Bourdais. So we're set up for a good 500. But Joey, you've been there all month. Let's talk about Hinch and the bump and the aftermath and what do we need to do differently? I don't know. Let's talk about it.
I mean, honestly, I don't know what we need to do differently. I think the one thing that drove me kind of nuts is I hate the 5:50 rule versus the 6 o'clock rule. I mean, if we got to do something for TV, how about TV stay an extra 30 minutes for a post-qualifying show? I mean, I think that makes a lot more sense. I like the gun going off at 6 in qualifying, but other than that,
and you're not the only one in that frame of mind. A lot of folks say they'll take qualifying right to the end, and maybe with NBC coming on board next year, we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this though, and I know that more often than not, you're going to see Honda commercials all over the Indy 500, and I'm sure Hinch is going to be all over it. And you're going to look at it if you're an average fan and go, "Well, I don't recognize him in the race," and all those things. So they're still getting coverage, right? Like Hinch is still out there. He's still the face more or less because they're still going to have those TV spots. And I look at it at more of a standpoint of you could argue that he's getting more coverage right now than he would if you were running 25th in the race because we all know that about 15th on back, you're not going to get any TV time. So judging by the way the Schmidt cars have practiced, you would say that there's a good bet that they're going to run worse than 10th right now. And I think that in some ways this is kind of a positive if you were going to try to shift it that way. I mean, Hinch certainly tried to look at it as more of a positive. But, this is definitely a crew error. They waited way too late to get him out there because they ended up having a mistake with the vibration. And obviously it cost them. And it just makes you wonder now, like, okay, are we really going to see things change? Because we've seen NASCAR become all-inclusive, and we got a Champions Provisional, and they've got all these charters and all these other crazy things. And I love the fact that it's the best 33. Maybe it's too much of a homer for tradition. Maybe we run into a situation where, oh no, we can't risk losing these sponsors because there's so much money in this sport that's starting to finally gravitate towards it, and we don't want to lose something. But I think when all's said and done, the health of the sport's still going to thrive, and then you're going to be better for it. And this is a lesson to everybody. I mean, you look at Hunter Ray, bought his way in. A lot of people, purist or not, like the fact that now this makes qualifying matter more. So, and, kudos to the drivers that didn't want to take anywhere between, I'm sure, $500,000 and $5 million to give up their ride. I don't know those numbers for sure. That's just a guesstimate. But kudos to them, the Stephen Wilsons, the Connor Daly's, the guys that this is their season. And if they're able to turn this into a career-defining moment and a good top 5 run, they just changed the complexion of potentially their entire career. So it's good that they bought into themselves more than they bought into the money. And as such, we have what was, I think, the most compelling storyline that's turned into just another added benefit to the 102nd Indy 500.
Absolutely. Now, let me throw this out at you, Joey, okay? Now, they've talked about that, there's more new teams in, potential for even more with another engine manufacturer, coming on board perhaps in the future, with the new engine rules. But I, for one, and it's not popular status, I'm not opposed to increasing the size of the field to say it's 36 or it's 39, because there's plenty of room on that track to run 36 or 39 cars. So if we balloon to 40 or 42 or 45 entries to expand the size of the field, as long as that's the rule going in, as long as entering the month we know there's 36 spots or there's 39 spots, and there's still going to be a bump, I'm not opposed to that, because 33 is just a number that was decided upon, oddly enough, in 1934, after the 1933 Indy 500 had a few fatalities when they started 42 cars. But that's, 33 is just a number. I think we need to have the fastest cars in there. I think we need to have a qualifying. But, if the sport continues to grow, why not make the field bigger? Does that 33 have to be set in stone?
Do you think you'd also like to see a situation where you have 33 up to 36, but as long as you're within a certain speed differential as leader, to prevent, like the situation I think you had, was it about 5-6 years ago when Lotus entered and were a bit of an embarrassment?
Yeah, John Alesi, they parked him after like 10 laps but there's a rule in place. I think it's the 105% rule they call it or whatnot.
Okay,
yeah, but
fair enough,
I mean, if the series continues to draw teams and manufacturers,
yeah,
I don't see anything wrong with expanding up to, and not just to let everybody in, but I did the math because I'm a nerd. That I figured if you had 40 cars on the track at once, spread out evenly, there's still 323 feet between each car.
I'll say this. I'm in agreement with maybe expanding the field. If you've got 40 cars or 39 cars showing up for the event and they're all well sponsored, yeah, take in to help the sport to grow. Yeah, expand. I'd go 36. I'd 12 rows of 3, add it to that, and let it go. I'd like to see. I mean, I remember the old days of qualifying where cars would go out and they'd run 3 laps. They could run 3 laps, and if they could wave it off, come back, work on their car, and reattempt. And bump their way back into the field, so to speak. I thought the way the old bump day was very, very compelling. Of course, you had 4 days of qualifying back then too, and that's reduced to 2. But I think it'd be kind of a neat deal if there were cars where you had movement, where you could essentially bump your way back into the field like you used to. You remember when people used to bring out T cars and all that stuff and do it, and that was when it was really wild. It went right down to the gun went off at 6 o'clock, and you'd have guys, hustling through inspection and sitting at the end of pit lane, ready to go out and only to run out of time. I'm gonna
kind of interrupt this fun little segment y'all got going on what ifs and whatnot. Number one, the sport has been on a positive trend for a while now, but we're just now starting to see the benefits of everything. And this is the healthiest it's been, you could argue, in about 25 years. So one thing that I want to point out is, let's say we do expand the field. Let's say next year, 36-car entry, and we get 40 cars that come out, and we bump 4 of them out, and then the 4 that got bumped and maybe 2 or 3 others don't have a good race, and some sponsors decide to dip off. And the next year, we still have the 36 rule in place, but only 33 people show up. I mean, then you're over here moving the needle to just make everything look good when you fall below a line. Let's set the standard on a regular basis first, and let's continue to meet this 35 rule before we start thinking too far ahead. I would love to see a situation. It would be a good problem to have if we expand to 36 or 39. And I want it to be a 3, obviously. I mean, that would be ideal so we can keep the rows of 3s pretty clean.
Yeah.
But we can't run into a situation where we have sponsors leave and teams start to fall off. We're always going to have drivers. That's the one thing that's never going to go away, but it's everything else that's in place. And that's one of the reasons why an IndyCar seat is one that everybody wants to get.
Yeah, and that's a very, very valid point that you made, and purists will like that and stay in. Well, this is the Indy 500. It's a one-off event. It's the most special event of the year. It needs its own rules, its own qualifying concept, and leave it like that. And the purist will be happy. I'll be happy with it. I mean, I can live with that.
And the biggest thing for me, though, this is the biggest race in the world. Every set of eyeballs that loves racing at one point or another in their life, they always manage to put up their pair of eyeballs on this race. And I think that more than anything, when you've got, I'd argue this, is that NASCAR has hurt themselves with how much change they've gotten. All these other sports have hurt themselves by how much change they've implemented. And the one thing that IndyCar needs more than anything right now, especially with this race in particular, because nobody focuses on the rest of the season, they focus on this race, is continuity. And I think,
leave it alone. Leave it alone.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Indy 500 in a way is a bit like trying to, it's so easy to do. That's the big race for the year, isn't it, for these guys? I think if the IndyCar organization and the media people involved with the sport and the marketing people involved with the sport, they need to start looking at the other 15 or so races they have a year and not have the Indy 500 prop all of those races up throughout the year. They need to have people watching every 2 weeks rather than once a year.
Exactly, and that's something that Mark Miles has been trying really hard to do, and that's part of the reason why you look at Gateway. That was a big success. We're going to Portland, which I am a huge fan of, because even though I would rather see a Northwest race in Canada, I like the fact that we're at least going to the Northwest where really no other racing series is, and I think that we're going to see some really good growth and really good numbers out of Portland. And so, it's just like racing, right? Marketing a sport like this that is racing is effectively like being a driver out on the track. In order to pass, you got to go where they're not. And it's the same scenario to me. Whenever I'm looking at this thing and I look at how it's being marketed, you have to go where premier players aren't. And, and I said this, I don't know if I said it on the show or I said it to a few other people, but I think it's important to take yourself away from it's going to sound maybe bad in a way, but the ISC tracks. Detach yourself from NASCAR type of branding if you can, only because, frankly, I don't think that they're going to do I don't want to say a very good job, but they're not going to pursue those kind of things to push those kind of races for IndyCar and do them favors as much as they would their own brand with NASCAR. It just wouldn't be promoted the same. It's not to say that it would be promoted bad. It's just that it wouldn't be promoted to the level equal of, and that's the reason why we're sitting where we're sitting in some circumstances.
I think you look at the way the sport is sponsored. I think that's a key factor. And we've talked about this before. You look at NASCAR, and there are a lot of commercial sponsors, whereas IndyCar has gone down the more corporate sponsor route recently. And it seems to be starting to work. There's not many IndyCar teams, maybe apart from Penske that I can think of, that have a household name as their title sponsor. Whereas in NASCAR, everybody knows Lowe's and Nationwide and M&M's and all these sort of things. So I think they've got to be careful. They've grown their own little market share. And as you say, I think they've got to be very careful of saying, we're just going to market ourselves how NASCAR have. Well, that's not how... you've got a different set of, sponsors there, and you've got to be careful that you don't sort of dilute that.
Yeah. So, but let me bring this point up here, and this is one that's been made throughout the qualifying weekend, and some of the articles we've read from different people is that perhaps the season regulars in IndyCar should be protected from being bumped, which I strongly disagree with. I mean, that's the old 25-8 rule that wrecked open wheel racing for close to a decade. And now this is being brought back up now that one of the guys that is bumped is like I said before, the most visible guy in the series. Had we had a Pippa Mann get bumped along with a Jack Harvey or Jay Howard or even Oriol Servia, everybody would have been good and well with it. When Hinch gets bumped to the side, suddenly, do we need to protect the series regulars? I disagree with that. Again, I say I'm not opposed to expanding the field, but I think you need to race in on speed. And Christopher DeHardy, you've just joined us, and welcome in, Chris. What are your thoughts on this? Do we need to protect the series regulars somehow, and Chris, what are you, in a wind tunnel?
I'm driving right now. I don't know if that's going to be a big detriment.
Okay, so yeah. Well, go ahead, give us your thoughts quickly, and then mute again because you sound like you're in a wind tunnel.
No problem. So no one should be protected. I think it's actually a very, very wonderful thing that no one is protected and no one is safe. It puts a lot of stress on the drivers and on the crews, and it shows that if you're not fast enough, no matter who you are, you shouldn't be able to race. Bobby Rahal missed the race in 93 after he was the national champion in 92. Al Jr. won the national championship and the 500 in 94. This is showing 95. No one is safe, and I love that. Not only that, let's say you have someone that isn't regular full time, and they're fast enough, and they're out. They were quick enough, but they got bumped anyway, or bought out by another driver. How do they go to the sponsor and say, yeah, I was quick enough, but because of the way this rule was written, I can't race? Why would that sponsor then come back? And that was the point that I made on Twitter yesterday, is especially with these one-offs that get in that are quicker, like Jay Howard, who was the quickest Schmidt car on Saturday. How does he go to one cure and say, oh, I was fast enough, but unfortunately my full-time teammate could not make the show, and unfortunately I'm not going to be racing even though I've got the deal with you? And that was my very, very appalling British accent, I know. But
hey, leave the British bit to me, okay?
I was going to say, yeah, Richard's right here. Stop.
I try my best on that one. My limit, I don't have that big of a knowledge of Britain other than Gavin Free and a week spent in London. Anyway, he's one of the slow-mo guys, for those of you who don't know. Anyway, yeah, there's no reason to do any protection for them. Several series regulars missed the race in 2011. I mean, granted, Hunter Ray got his way back in with Bruno Junqueira, but still, you got a lot of other series regulars in 11 that did not make the show, and frankly, it's healthy because it shows that, hey, even if you're really, really, really good, if you make a mistake, it's on you, and that's going to ultimately hurt you in the end.
So, I want to spin this a different way. I don't disagree with Chris. I think the thing that stands out to me is that the sport kept its integrity.
Absolutely.
I don't know if other sports would have that same integrity, just based on how many changes that we see day to day, year to year. And I think that above all, what makes this a positive is the fact that the sport maintained its integrity, and in many ways, that is the biggest positive of all, and that's why we see so many of these rave reviews, because somebody stuck to their guns. You mean you did something and you stood by it instead of, well, last minute change of plans. We're just gonna flip the page and maybe throw that rule book out the window. I love the fact that we stay true to our word.
All right, now, Richard, you got a question for somebody on the panel?
Well, for everybody apart from Chris, who after that a terrible British accent I'm never going to speak to again.
Okay. Now, what's your question, Richard? Go ahead.
If I tried to do an American accent, I'd never be allowed back on the show. So, now, bear with me if I'm wrong here, but I'm right in saying that the 500 still counts as a double point scoring race, yes?
Correct.
Yes.
How do you guys feel about that? Personally, I don't like that. I think it manipulates the point standings a little bit and manipulates the season potentially. I don't like double points anyway. I think it ruins the... because it says, well, this race is more important than that race. And I think over the course of, a dozen to 15 races or 20 races a year, each race in its own right is its own, should count equally. I question having that setup where you get double points for one race. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I mean, do you agree with Will Power? I'll put that out there because that's something that's been talked about the last few years. I disagree with double points at Sonoma or the season finale, wherever it may be.
Yeah.
But I don't disagree. I disagree with certain points that used to be in qualifying. I love the fact that was changed a little bit for Indy. But I love double points at Indy. I wish, personally, if we ran the Triple Crown of IndyCar, so to speak, if we did Pocono 500 miles and somewhere else 500 miles, if those were all double points, I wouldn't have a problem with it personally.
Yeah.
But that said, I like the fact that this is the crown jewel event of IndyCar, and I love the fact that it's implemented and hyped up so much because, yeah, does it hijack the championship a little bit? Yeah, but you know what? In the grand scheme of things, when you've got so many guys that are doing one-offs for this particular race, they don't make a championship impact for themselves. Now, could they potentially take away something? Like if they finish 22nd and Will Power 25th, do they hijack maybe a few of those points because they were a spot or two ahead? Yeah, but that's part of the field of 33. And you know where you stand after this race anyway. So you know where you need to go, and there's still plenty of time. And we've seen plenty of runs happen. I look at Joseph Newgarden last year, who was like 8th or 7th in the championship when he left Indy, and then just went on a tear. He knew what he had to do, and he went out and he did it. So to that end, no, I love the emphasis at Indy. I wish it was just double points at Indy only, though, if we're not going to have other 500-mile races.
But do you think, going back to the point we tried to make earlier, where one of the things that IndyCar needs to do to grow is build up, the momentum for some of their other races? Do you think that the potential, some of these races, from a fan's perspective, are a little bit inferior to the 500 because they're not the double points. They're, if you want to make everything a level playing field throughout the season and build up some of the other races, then do you not need to treat them with the same? And I know it's not because of the sport and the history of the sport, but I don't know. I'm just trying to sort of think of a way that maybe it's sort of the 500 is so big and some of the other races are so comparatively small. How can you adjust that balance?
I'll spin you another. Hold on a minute, Frank. I got something I want to point to prove here.
Okay.
Let me ask you this, Richard. When you see the Monaco GP and you see all the people that are in Monaco, how many of those fans do you think also go and watch Singapore? How many of those fans do you think go and touch other, the Malaysias of the world? So there's so many casual fans in sport that only pay attention to the ones that matter, the Super Bowl, if you will.
Yeah. That
I don't even think that that championship implications even become a thought in their mind or points, like even if they ask questions. So to that end, I mean, this is more of a purist thing. To that end, I don't think that it really matters because there's so many casual fans that attended. I don't know if it's even an issue, personally.
So one very, very final question for you. I know we've got to get onto other topics, but would you take a 10% drop in viewer figures for the 500 if you got a 20% increase in the other events?
Oh, man.
I mean, yeah, that's like a Pyrrhic argument. You know what I mean? It's like that's not going to happen. So why even ask? But But as far as I'm concerned, the series is built around the 500. Okay, the Indianapolis 500 predates the formation of the current series by 85 years. There's so much history of that track. It's one of the biggest races in the world. It's one of the longest running sporting events in the history. I mean, the only sporting events that have run longer are the World Series, the Kentucky Derby, and the Stanley Cup.
In the U.S.
In the U.S., yes, you've got boating races in the UK that have been around longer.
And cricket.
They got boating races, yes.
But I'm saying is like that race has earned its prestige. It should have the double points thing. Like Joey said, it's early enough in the season. There's enough time to recover from it. Like Joey, I disagree that we need double points for the season ender. We don't need a chase. We don't need gimmicks at the end of the year. But Indianapolis has earned that spot as the centerpiece of the series and the centerpiece of the motor racing world. The only events that are bigger, perhaps Le Mans, maybe Monaco. But
I would argue that if we did a similar qualifying format that we do for the Indy 500, if we implemented that same style for the Daytona 500, I almost guarantee you we'd have a bigger car count. I mean, I understand that this year was kind of an anomaly, but pretty soon it's going to be a trend because we're seeing it every single weekend. And the affordability of NASCAR is ridiculous. And so I think when you really get a chance to look at the qualifying format, I bet you'd have a bigger car count if you implemented something similar to Daytona.
All right, and speaking of NASCAR, we need to move over to our NASCAR segment in a little bit. But before we do, a couple more things in the 500, and that being, Joy, I want to run this by you. I would ask Chris, except his audio is terrible. The bump day being on the first day of qualifying as opposed to the second day of qualifying, giving teams a chance to bump their way back in, with a day to work on the car. What are your thoughts there? Because, years ago it was pole day first and then bump day last. Now it's kind of backwards. And there are a lot of old timers and purists. They don't understand the qualify for the race and then requalify for position. It kind of makes no sense in their mind. Those old guys like me and Gray. But what do you think about a return to the older qualifying format where the pole day was early and the bump day was last?
Man, I really actually like this qualifying format, if I'm honest. If I had my way, though, we'd just do it all in one day, just to save time, save people, because this is a long month. But I personally don't mind the format that we have because it puts a bigger emphasis on the pole, because one day we're emphasizing the bump, the next day we're emphasizing the pole. And we're also emphasizing the Fast 9 on bump day. So there's two different races going on, and I think that's so awesome on a Saturday. And then on Sunday, we set the field. Like, I for one, actually like the style that we have, because in the old day, to me, in a weird way, the pole sitter got lost. The pole sitter was kind of a non-factor, a non-story. And, and this time around, it worked out beautifully because you got a hometown guy in Ed Carpenter that took the third pole of his career in the Indy 500. And, I mean, it's a huge deal around here because there's only a handful of guys that can say they've done that. So I think it puts a little bit more emphasis on somebody's accomplishment for pole, and we still take care of bump day and we take care of the Fast 9. So I personally like this format.
Now, Gray, you've been watching racing your whole life. And so what are your thoughts on this real quick before we go ahead and make our picks for Indy and then talk about that NASCAR All-Star race?
Yeah, I mean, it's a valid point. It's people that I think what he's saying, but back in that day, the pole did kind of get lost because the pole, you had 4 days of qualifying in those days, and the pole was won a week earlier. So, by the time you get to bump day, yeah, that's kind of old news. I can understand that. I do like what Frank brought up about 2 days of qualifying. I think you could do both. I think you could still have your Fast 9 and have the bump done on Sunday as well, just to make it that much more going on. So yeah, I can understand why some of the old timers, and I've been watching Indy for years and years and know how it used to be, and I kind of like that drama of bump day, and that was the final, the end.
So would you transfer the times from Saturday into Sunday, and just if you had 10th on Saturday, you'd still be 10th on Sunday? Like, how would that work exactly?
Well, I would say, it'd be something to have to work out. You would have to have a format that you would go by, obviously. But I just think like bumping, it's really going to matter. Teams could stand on their time. Let me put it this way: you could stand on your time. If you were solidly in the field, you could stand on your time. The top 9 are going to requalify. Basically, just because it's just to set the top 9. You could still have that Fast 9 formula. Everybody from 9th to 33rd could stand on their time, or you would have the guys that were on the bubble have to have their cars at the ready to get back in. That's kind of the way it used to be done. You could stand on time, or essentially you could withdraw your time from Saturday and requalify. You'd be taking a gamble, and if your time, you didn't better your time on Sunday and you withdrew, you'd knock yourself out of the field, and that used to be done as well in the old way.
And that's happened a few times over history, yeah. So
yeah. I mean, it's a different format, and like I said, I don't think it's gimmicky because we've seen that before at Indy. And again, like we say, it's the biggest race in the world. It's the most special race on the world. It means so much to make the show and get in. I just think you could really spice it up, and you could put butts in the seats for Saturday and Sunday if you went to that format where guys were standing on their time or withdrawing cars and trying to requalify to get back in. And that way you have a lot of movement, toward the, say, from 25th on back, and you've got guys that get nervous. Do I withdraw my time and try to requalify? And you're going to have guys that, sitting 11th, 12th, and they're going to stand pat. They solidly in the field and not have to worry. They might get bumped back a position or two if somebody really finds some speed. But, I would say try that type of format one time and just to see what kind of response it got. What do you think of that?
I don't have a response.
Oh,
No.
man, I mean that's all good stuff. Yeah, we can tweak the qualifying format. Whether the pole is first or the bump is first, but we can debate that forever. But in the end, if you look at this year's field, man, this is a pretty strong field top to bottom. There's almost no pretenders in that field. We didn't have to go out and reach out to Buddy Lazier and beg him to get a car in here. So, I mean, everybody in there has earned their way in. But with that being said, in order to allow enough time to talk about NASCAR and Formula 1 later show, we kind of need to move on to make our picks. And again, the field is so strong. And Joey, you've been there all month. I would ask you who you like for the Indy 500, but I'm going to steal the first pick because I always pick last. But honest to God, I talked about this a couple weeks ago. I think Will Power has an Indy 500 win up his sleeve, and I think that's going to be this year. So I'm going to go with Will, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Joey. You can throw in whatever other final IndyCar thoughts you want to before we move on, and then make a pick, and then we'll go around the table.
So Will Power, the guy that won the Indy GP, I actually was talking about him at the beginning of the month because it's usually the guy that has a rough start to the season that Indy suddenly rewards. But we've never seen a guy win the GP and the 500. So I think because of that, that your prediction's not going to happen. I keep gravitating towards Matthias Leicht. I think he's going to have a good run, really good run for the rookie. Tony Kanaan, the AJ Foyt cars are a sleeper there in the row 4. The Chevys obviously are really strong in no-toe, so I think that they're going to be difficult to pass. That said, I'm going to take a Honda, and I'm going to pick a little bit of a redemption. I think Bourdais gets it done. I know he hasn't always had the best results here, obviously, and certainly not the best luck after last year, but when I look at the fact that talking to him in qualifying, that car is bad fast like it was last year. And the big thing he said was, I got a little too loose. I chickened out. I backed off. But, hey, if it's like 5 laps to go and he's in a scrum and the nuts and bolts are flying off the thing, he's still going to wheel it. And I trust him to wheel it. So I like that car. I love Craig Hampson. I think he's the best engineer in the paddock. And I think that their damper program is second to none. So I think even though practice times would indicate them, how often have we seen the teams that lead and kick ass for the first week end up looking like crap on the 500? So I like him to get it done on Sunday.
I thought his post qualifying comments were the most honest I've ever heard. I thought that was a remarkable interview that he gave after qualifying.
Absolutely, yeah. Never spares his thoughts for an opinion. That's for sure.
Now, Seth, you haven't said a word tonight, so I'm going to go ahead and bring you into conversation and allow you to have the next pick for the Indy 500.
Well, honestly, I went with this pick last year, and I'm going to go with it again this year. I want to see the Andretti curse come to an end, so I'm going to go with Marco Andretti.
Not a bad pick at all, so Andretti has been great at the Speedway. But we'll have to see how it all works out. So, Gray, you are next for the pick.
I've got 5 bottles of Fuzzy's vodka sitting on top of my curio. I've collected one every year that they've done the commemorative bottle for the Indy 500. And I tell you, I'm an Ed Carpenter fan and a Fuzzy Zeller fan, and I'm going to say the local hometown boy gets it done this year. He's that track owes him one.
Now, are those bottles empty or full?
They're still full. I hadn't cracked them open.
Okay, I was wondering maybe if you enjoyed a little bit.
Yeah. Let me throw this out for a second. So, we've always heard the curse of the green cars at Indianapolis, right? The green cars are bad luck. That was started in 1920 when Gaston Chevrolet won the Indy 500 in a green car and then was killed a few weeks later at another track, right? For forever, nobody would run a green car in Indianapolis until Jim Clark showed up.
1965.
1965, won the car in a green Lotus. And then, you've got the era of sponsor-driven liveries, right, where we've seen green cars with, Quaker State, Skoal, GoDaddy, 7-Eleven, and there's not been another green car to win the Indy 500 since Jim Clark. Now, of course, Danica, who is Ed Carpenter's teammate, has got the bright green GoDaddy car, and on top of the green curse, she put the number 13 on her car. But it didn't escape my notice that Ed Carpenter changed his colors from green to black. He's driving a black car. The 2 times Ed qualified on pole, he had a green car and had a great success in qualifying and not in the race. I mean, could it be that Ed Carpenter goes ahead and wins this thing with a black car? So we'll see. Funny. So all right.
I would say yes, but I don't like their race pace. I mean, Ed always seems, for whatever reason, as good as he is on ovals, for whatever reason, the race pace just starts to falter a little bit, like they can't keep up with the track. I actually, the guy that I like that's with ECR, or girl, Danica, I think, if she finishes, she's going to be in the top 5. That's my personal opinion. But I actually like Spencer Pigot to get a career best finish out of this. I mean, he starts P6. I would love it for him because he's been right there on the cusp of the glass ceiling just waiting to break through, and I think that he could very well do it on Sunday. All
right, now, Richard, you're the last one to get a pick for the race here.
I was going to go with Spencer Pigot as well. I think that, where that team struggled so far this season has been to actually put everything together on a Sunday, and I think it's about time that they put all the pieces in play and went out there and got the job done. I think it'd be great for them if they did.
I think you stunned Frank there with that pick.
I think I may have done, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I muted my mic.
Wow,
I'm sitting here talking and nobody. So anyway, Christopher had to go. He says his pick is Newgarden and his dark horse is Sage Karam. So with that being said, let's move on to talk about NASCAR and the All-Star race and the new aero package and the restrictor plate on the at Charlotte. Seth, you were there at the race. Gray, you were there at the race.
Yes, I was there. Yep.
All right, so you guys go ahead and I'm going to throw it to you. It was Kevin Harvick winning yet another race, not for points but for money.
Yeah, it was a terrific race. I tell you, it was the best mile-and-a-half race I've seen in many a year. Had every element that you like in the air dominance of the lead car was somewhat was negated. I mean, usually on these mile-and-a-halves that the lead car has a vast advantage when it gets out in clean air. And that was negated. A lot of passing. I think it was only 2 All-Star races in the history of the event had more lead changes than this event. You had cars that could drift back to 5th or 6th place and then work their way back to the lead. The field didn't get strung out. If the leader got more than 6 or 8 car lengths out in front of second and third place while they were racing side by side, second and third place could line back up and run the leader down within a lap and get right back on his bumper. I really enjoyed the race. And the formula basically we've known for years: slow these cars down and you'll get better racing. These cars now go into the corners at such at such high speeds now. There's only one optimal line going into the corner, and essentially you have to run nose to tail. You really can't race side by side. Slowing these cars down about 16 miles an hour made for great racing. And I heard some of the press say, well, you negated the driver ability. You put it, they're just holding it wide open. But I'm going to tell you what, some of the moves that I saw during that race was all ability. Some of the moves were daring. When you take and drive the cars into the third turn at Charlotte 3 and 4 wide. That takes some skill and ability. The car's not taking anything away from the driver in those things. Like Seth said earlier when we were talking in pre-show, you could probably tweak on it a little bit and make it better. I've got some ideas on how that could be done, but it's certainly a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
NASCAR got some really good feedback from it. What they can do later. Obviously, the fans are clamoring for immediate change, and obviously we can't do that right now because in the charter agreements that NASCAR has with the teams, before there are major rule changes, there's got to be a certain amount of time in advance an advance notice before they can be done. I heard one longtime person mention the other day that, when they talk about implementing these rules, NASCAR doesn't need to go with the driver council or the owner council. They should listen to the fan council and make the decision based on that. And there's a lot of validity to that because you let the teams get involved in it and have time to do it. And one of the neat things about this setup was the teams had no time to prepare for it. They didn't get the spoiler or the duct work in advance so they could go to the wind tunnel and tweak it. They showed up at the track and were issued the spoiler, the splitter, and the ducts and had to run it as they came. And they kind of learned on the fly. But like it always is, the cream's going to rise to the top, and these guys are going to adapt, and they're going to adapt quickly. And, of course, I don't think it was any surprise that Harvick won the race because even with the new setup, mechanically, right now they have found an edge, and it's working for them. And, if we used the same format last year in the All-Star race, we'd probably seen Truex prevail with it. So, good hats off to NASCAR. Hopefully they'll stick with it. But I tell you what, even the Open, the pre-race, that was some terrific racing in that. Really enjoyed watching those guys. And hats off to A.J. Allmendinger and Suarez. They drove their butts off in the show. And really for me, I enjoyed watching them run because they were aggressive all night long and tried to take the lead and go to the front. So, hats off to those guys because they really put on a show.
For the first time in a while, I was entertained. I mean, it was the first NASCAR race I've seen. I was actually entertained. I'm like, okay, this is cool. I do agree. The fans need to be the people that NASCAR listen to, right? Like, you don't let the inmates run the asylum necessarily. And I mean, that's what we had back in like the old kart era. We saw that turned out. So I think that the one thing I will say about this, though, as much as it was awesome to watch, and I would love for it to be implemented for the 600, and it's also helping from a safety perspective because the cars are so slowed down, you're not going to have a chance to create any lift whenever you have a bad accident.
And that same formula works in all forms. You slow the cars down, the fans sitting in the stands or watching on TV can't tell the difference between a car going into a corner at 190 versus 175 or 180. Can't do it. You slow the cars down, you're going to get better racing. That's the name of the game.
My one thing I'll say, and I know I cut Richard off a second ago, so I'm going to throw it to him after this. You have to be cautious not to implement this at every mile and a half because if you start to see the same show everywhere, people become disinterested. So, all the mile and a halves now, unfortunately, look just about the same. We don't have a flat Vegas anymore mixed with a high bank Chicagoland. Now everything looks the same. So we have to implement something to make sure that we can change the product at other mile and a halves. But as far as this being a start, I like it. So, Richard?
Well, I think your point there, the issue with the track is very valid. But what I was pleased to see was you had closer racing, but it wasn't like a Daytona or a Talladega where you had a huge, pack of racing. You could make a move by yourself. It helped when there was, guys pushing you or working with you, but you could go it alone out there. And I think what was really important was that Harvick won. I think if somebody else had won or, somebody from mid-pack had won, then people would say, oh, well, it's making the lottery of it like a super speedway. The fact that he went out and won again is like, okay, the aero package has changed, but the best guys still win. You know, what's more important? If you had the same guy win every week but had exciting, close racing, is that better than having a different winner every race but boring races?
That's what they call Formula One.
And while I was sitting there watching the race, it reminded me a lot of the old Daytona and Talladega clips from the 80s, from the 70s, in which it was the pre-restrictor plate era back then. And the way drivers would have to work together to try to get runs, and the way the runs formed. It was very interesting, and the number one comment from drivers after the race, whether it was Truex, whether it was Kevin Harvick, Suarez, Denny Hamlin, who I spoke to this morning, they all used the same word, that it was fun, that they had a lot of fun, it was refreshing.
It appeared that way watching it because the guys diced it up. I mean, they weren't riding; they were actually, working on one another. And you're right; you're absolutely right.
Now, something that Mike Wheeler, who I also spoke to earlier today, that he had mentioned was if you're going to slow the cars down the way they are slowing down with this package, if you're going to implement that at other tracks, say Michigan, and have a 400-mile race, you just turned a 3-hour race into possibly a 4 to 4.5-hour race based on the drop in lap times.
So is it not?
I don't think so that much.
He may have been exaggerating. But I understand where he's going.
He was overstating that a good bit because you're not gonna. You had a drop off of 16 average speed drop off of about 16 miles an hour, but basically, I don't think you're going to see that much difference. You probably go back. You go back to race times that would go back maybe a dozen years, but still, you're not looking at adding an extra hour to a race. I think that's a little exaggerating. But one of the things that I'd like to see implemented, if they do change this and implement this program down the road, they use the restrictor plate. I'd like to see, and this would be a good time for it because NASCAR has implemented the engine rules this year, where the teams are having to run engines twice. And thereby they're reducing their current engine inventory is going down. This would be a good time for NASCAR to look at doing a major engine change, since we're already reducing the engine inventories of these teams, and reduce the cubic inch displacement on these cars to maybe go back to the old 310 or 311 cubic inch engine and give them a smaller throttle body, which you're going to slow them down. You're going to take horsepower away from them, but you're going to still give them a little bit of throttle response that they lack with the plate. Couple that with the drag that they increased. They almost double the drag on these cars this weekend. You couple those two together, and you might have a formula that would work pretty well.
And it very well may. And as we have said, Harvick won. It's his second All-Star race win. 11 years to the day to his first one. And in both All-Star races, he started fourth.
One very final comment. I know we were just getting away from it, but on Gray's from a technical point of view, I think I'd like to see them take a little bit of the downforce away. I know they added more downforce. Take just a little bit away. Maybe increase those top-end speeds. Just to make sure the drivers are on the brakes and are having to lift into the corner. You don't want to see them flat out at every turn and lose that ability to balance the car in the corners. Sorry, back with you.
Well,
what would you talked about at the opening of the show, Seth? You liked it, but you thought it needs some tweaking. What would be your suggestion to add to it?
Well, I'm not as familiar with the mechanical or the technical side of it. I'll be honest right now. Maybe a little bit of a bigger restrictor plate to allow instead of a 16 mile per hour drop off, maybe a 10 mile per hour drop off, maybe something along the lines of tapered spacer, but to me that would be more of the Xfinity series than we would have in the Cup series.
Yeah.
So, again, where I'm not as familiar with it, I wouldn't make a suggestion.
Yeah, that makes a good point. Now, we'll say this. They were 15 mile an hour or 16 mile an hour off this weekend. You give these teams this package and let them go back home with it, with the spoilers and all the equipment, they are going to reduce, they're going to close that gap. They're not going to come back and be 16 miles an hour slower. They're going to be more like what you said, 10 to 12 miles an hour, because they're going to find speed in it. You see what I'm saying? So anything, this was because they got this cold turkey, so to speak. But if these teams are allowed to work with it, they're gonna cut into that.
All right, so really good stuff, really good observations on the new package. But we're going to be running the conventional package when we get to the 600 next weekend. So if we want to talk about Formula One at all, we have to move on and make some picks for 600 and have a few moments to speak about the Monaco Grand Prix coming up. So that being said, Richard, who do you like for the 600?
Blaney.
Seth?
Harvick.
Gray?
Come back to me. Pass.
Joey?
Bush.
Which one?
I was just waiting on that one. I'll go Kyle, actually.
All right, Gray, I'm back to you.
Oh, let's see. I'm going to go with, I'm going to say a Chevrolet might prevail this time. I'm going to go with Larson.
All right, I'm going to go with Truex. Why not? He's been pretty good on the mile and a half. So Richard, we've got about 4 minutes to talk about the Monaco Grand Prix coming up. People are speculating maybe Mercedes is not the shoe-in for this week. So what you got?
They're going to be there or thereabouts. I think they're going to be competitive. I think you can't really look beyond, to my mind, Red Bull for this weekend. They've got very, very good mechanical grip. They, their aero side is pretty efficient. Mercedes probably won't be a million miles wide, I think, because everybody says, they've got good engine and their aero and mechanical grip aren't quite as good. But if you've got a good engine in a low-speed track, you can increase your downforce level, so you counteract that. There's a few comments have been made about the wheelbase. Mercedes have turned around and said the wheelbase on their car is worth, or penalises them by 0.1 seconds a lap around Monaco, and that their increased downforce will make up for that. Possibly, we'll wait and see. But it's a great circuit. It's so unique. It's so demanding on drivers mentally that you hope that you get the tyres are taking the hyper, super, ultra, mega soft tyre, whatever they're calling it now, there for the first time, I believe. So you could see some guys going on a slightly different qualifying strategy, maybe not running those tyres, especially if there's not much life in them, and maybe starting 5th or 6th and hoping that they can jump the guys in the pit stops and stay out there a little bit longer on the slightly harder tyre. It could be a fascinating race. It really could, and it's a great way to sort of kick off a fantastic day of motor racing in 3 series, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Monaco has been historically tough to pass, and qualifying position has been tantamount. We've seen Monaco races that are just a procession, and we've seen some that are just absolutely crazy. The Monaco Grand Prix was one of the first races I watched when I was a little kid. When my uncle bought this new fangled device called a VCR. Remember those?
I thought you were going to say a television then.
Oh no, I'm not that old. No, he bought a VCR, and we had watched the 1978 Monaco Grand Prix. Patrick Depailler took the win. But ever since then, I fell in love with Monaco, and I've watched Formula One the rest of my life. And it's just a neat event. It's I don't think it's lost any more of its luster than Indy has or the Coke 600 has. So And Seth says, I don't know how to work VCR. Seth? All right.
One very quick point.
Go right ahead.
There's no Friday practice at Monaco. It's Thursday practice. So, yeah, I guess it'll be too late, won't it, by then? Well, carry on.
I don't know what your point was. Yeah, so the practice is Thursday.
People want to watch the practice. Don't expect to see it on Friday, Tuesday, tomorrow.
It's yesterday,
Thursday.
folks.
Yeah, it's yesterday.
It's yesterday.
Yeah. You need to get your VCR out and play it back on there. Oh, boy.
Oh, boy. Guys, we are up against the clock. We're just about out of time. Who wants to take a pick for Monaco? Gray, who you like?
I like Vettel.
Vettel. Seth, who you like?
Hamilton.
All right, Richard?
Kimi.
Joey?
I would love it if Richard's pick came to fruition. I really don't know how you don't pick Daniel Ricciardo for this race. I think McLaren's going to be strong. Alonso could sneak up there because that Trek hides deficiencies in some ways, but I like Ricciardo.
All right, and I'll just go with Lance Stroll because why not? Because y'all took the good picks.
Hold on. Why don't you do the good thing and pick the man from Monegasque, Charles Leclerc? Yeah. Why not?
Leclerc, yeah, I could also
he's running really good.
I could also pick Valtteri Bottas too. So
or Max Verstappen,
or Max Verstappen, yeah, or I could pick Kevin Magnussen.
That Sauber, I think that Sauber could run really well at Monaco. Honestly, I think he could run top 7.
All right, well, guys, we are out of time. Before we've
been out of time. Don't lie to the audience, Frank. They love us. Maybe not you.
I want to thank you, Gray, Seth, and Richard. Joey, you were on the show too. So, to all our listeners on Drafting the Circus, Hoopazoo Radio, iHeartRadio, we appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll talk to y'all next week when we got the results from this greatest weekend of motorsports, Memorial Day weekend. Good night, everybody.
WHOOBAZOO, that's Hoopazoo.com.
Enter website.